Hours after Donald Trump announced his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, India issued a measured endorsement. A statement from the Ministry of External Affairs said the summit holds the promise of ending the conflict in Ukraine, echoing Prime Minister Modi's repeated assertion that this is not an era of war. India also expressed readiness to support the talks, positioning itself as a potential stabilizing force amid global flux. India is carefully navigating a complex diplomatic landscape, endorsing the upcoming Trump-Putin summit in Alaska while preserving its long-standing ties with Moscow. Prime Minister Modi has directly engaged with President Putin on the Ukraine conflict, reaffirming India's stance that this is not an era of war. At the same time, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval is exploring deeper economic cooperation with Russia, including new industrial projects. Just days earlier, Trump had accused India of aiding Russia's war efforts through continued crude imports. India has pushed back, asserting that its oil trade is legal within global frameworks and vital for energy security. India's ambassador to the US, Vinay Mohan Kwatra, also spoke to Senator Lindsey Graham, offering clarity on India's position. His tweet read, "Spoke to Senator Lindsey Graham and shared with him the Indian perspective on our energy security, including increasing energy trade with the United States." From New Delhi to Washington and Moscow to Alaska, India is working both sides, underlining its independent, multipolar foreign policy.
India is not picking sides, but it's picking a strategy. From defending energy ties, pushing for talks, and is staying firm on autonomy, New Delhi is proving that in a divided world, balance is power. In Delhi, Mohammad Ghazali for NDTV.
I'm being joined by Strategic Affairs expert Dr. Brahma Chalani, as well as Professor Anuradha Shenoy, the former Dean and Chairperson of the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies from JNU. Let me start off with Dr. Chalani. Thank you for joining us, sir. Firstly, now talking about the balancing act that we just mentioned that India is conducting, it is playing things safe, but is also not afraid of being firm, especially when it comes to tariffs, especially when it comes to its imports from Russia. We've always been firm on that stand as well. We've been saying that Europe, in fact, does import more oil from Russia than India does. And not backing off in that sense is a very strong message that we're sending to the United States and the world as well, sir, don't you think?
Yes, but let's be clear as to what Trump is doing. He has weaponized tariffs to secure a trade deal largely on his terms. And the trade deal that he wants is not just about trade. He's also seeking to constrain India's foreign policy options. He is demanding Indian commitments on strategic and security matters. For example, publicly he has blasted India for its heavy reliance on Russian oil imports, as well as he has criticized India's long-standing purchases of Russian military equipment. So it's very clear that what he is seeking goes beyond trade. He is using tariffs as an instrument to fundamentally change the course of the direction of Indian foreign policy. Unfortunately for him, this kind of coercion will not succeed because an independent approach to international affairs has been the linchpin of Indian foreign policy under successive governments in New Delhi. So India will remain an independent power and will seek to advance its economic and military security interests, while at the same time seeking to conclude a trade deal with the US, a deal that is evenly balanced and seeks to advance India's own interests.
Absolutely. Professor Shenoy, comment on this point. Now, India has maintained good friendship with Russia as well, and the US up until now when there's been tensions over tariffs. But we are continuing to support the fact that the US and Russia are going to be holding talks, Trump and Putin, to solve the Ukraine crisis. We have been maintaining time and again that this is not the time for war, like the Prime Minister has been reiterating. So we've put our stance firm in saying that we're not going to be bullied, but at the same time, we do support global peace, and it doesn't have to mix together when it comes to diplomacy. And do you think we've played those cards right?
Well, look, first, I think India is very well placed to be this balancer between the United States and Russia, because it's taken a very clear position by which Russia trusts it. Even though the US, I think Brahma is completely right, they seek to shift India's policy and they're using tariffs like a sanctions or like embargo. So it's not an economic deal, but a sanctions kind of methodology. But given that, I think India's response has been very balanced. In which they are trying to explain India's energy needs, the fact that the air chief yesterday explained how important Russian weapons were, even in our recent national security issues. The S-400, which is one of the best air defense missile weapons. And in this particular thing, I think it's been very good that India has reiterated what the Prime Minister has said, that this is not a period of war. And if needed, we could be of any assistance for a move towards peace on the issue of Ukraine. I might tell you that in that, India has also much earlier, approached Ukraine as a peace broker. And I think they have a much more valid position than any other country, given the fact that they've had good strategic relations with the US, and the Russians trust them, and they have been able, from their point of view, to balance these. And even at a time when President Trump has tried to humiliate India, India has not retorted back in a crude fashion, but done it in a very measured way. And the negotiations would go on. And I think India would succeed. There's no way they can give in on either the trade negotiations or the energy issue.
Right. Dr. Shalani, on that point, do you think if India succeeds, like ma'am was saying, it could in fact replace the control per se that US is trying to have on India's policy, not just India, but the other countries that they've imposed tariffs on as well, that it could prove that US cannot in fact have independent control of a country and its policies, and in India ensuring that, of course, there's going to be repercussions on the Indian economy as well, but ensuring that we can withstand those without the help of the US, that would be a big message to other countries as well, sir, don't you think?
What Trump is doing is using the issue of Russian oil as a pretext to build pressure on India to fall in line behind Washington. For example, if you take Russian energy exports, Europe is a major importer of Russian liquefied natural gas. Trump hasn't even spoken about Europe's purchases of Russian LNG. The world's largest buyer of Russian oil and gas is China. Again, Trump has not even mentioned China's role in providing money to Russia's coffers. He has made India his target, the sole target. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why has he made India his sole target so far? In fact, India has become the first victim of Trump's secondary sanctions. No other country has been hit with secondary sanctions by Trump, just India. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is he seeking to do? He's clearly seeking to strong-arm India into accepting a largely one-sided trade deal. And therefore, what he's up to poses a serious foreign policy challenge for us. We have to balance firmness with a willingness to engage Washington.
Right.
We have to safeguard our vital interests while at the same time be willing to make concessions that do not compromise our core interests. So it has to be a very balanced approach and requires strong political will, requires
Right.
skillful, very skilled diplomacy and a readiness to stay firm while engaging Washington at the same time.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Chalani and Professor Shenoy, for joining us and sharing your thoughts on these developments.